people born super productive, super able to just jump into a system and make it more efficient and even understand systems thinking? Or is that something that we learn over time? Are there tools and tricks and hacks, like some of the things that we'll get into in this conversation?
To me, I feel like the only way I've been able to achieve that is this idea of like committing to be present at the things that I've agreed to be present at. I struggle with productivity, and we're going to talk about that today, what that even means about struggling with productivity. But it's a thing that's part of all of our lives. It's a thing that changes as we grow and go through phases. And that's what I would love to dive into today. I think this is such a rich topic for conversations, and like strap in because perimenopause is down the road and like it's gonna get wilder. Like, sorry. Like,
I've already just gotten used to this, not more.
Sorry. Sorry.
Let me tell you something, girl. Let the hair down, okay? Go grab something yummy to drink and just come for this ride of this conversation, because we're speaking to somebody who is a medical doctor, trained at NYU, did that in like no time. I mean, she is brilliant. She is a writer. She's a published author. She is one of my best friends, okay? She's a mama, and she is just one of these human beings who understands how to get it all done, but not with making yourself spin into 500 little like pieces, right? Like, let's get it all done, and let's also be whole as we get it all done, and let's also bring some joy in how we get it done. And that's why I'm so excited to speak to Kate today. Hi, Kate. Dr. Kate. You're listening to Madam Speaker Says, your no fluff cheat code to becoming the voice everyone listens to. I'm your host, Machochodi. If you've been waiting for a permission slip to straighten your crown and take up space like you invented the blueprint, Madam Speaker Says got you covered. No whispers, no apologies, just you, me, and some bold ass moves. Let's get into it.
Kind of like start in the most relatable way possible. I struggle with productivity, and we're going to talk about that today, what that even means about struggling with productivity. But it's a thing that's part of all of our lives. It's a thing that changes as we grow and go through phases. And that's what I would love to dive into today. I think this is such a rich topic for conversation. But, 5-year-old Kate, I think to like frame the idea of productivity as a superpower that sometimes feels like maybe I was born with, that's multifactorial, right? So part of it is I'm, personality wise, right? Do you do Enneagrams? Do you know Enneagrams? Are you into Enneagrams? So I'm an Enneagram type 2. Okay. For anyone out there who does Enneagrams, that might be like,
let's define it. What is it?
It's 9 different personality types. You can take an online quiz, and it kind of puts you into one of these 9 categories of what you most align with, and understanding where you are kind of within that space can kind of help, in my experience. So Enneagram 2 is kind of like the giver, right? The person who very much through what she's able to give to others, which on the one hand is great, right? And on the other hand is very dangerous. And so when you're a healthy 2, you're kind of an altruistic, you're there for people, you're showing up, you're productive, doing good things for the world. An unhealthy 2 is kind of doing things to the point where you're not taking care of yourself, not looking out for yourself. So every one of these, each 9 types, it's not like there's good types and bad types. It's just types, right. And then you learn your spectrum of when you're healthy, when you're not. Anyway, all to say, kind of personality wise, I think that folks who kind of naturally have a personality that aligns them with looking outward and feeling like they really want to help and be of service, kind of aligns you with therefore wanting to be productive in that space. I grew up with, on both sides of my family, kind of grandparents who are either, the families immigrating to the United States or, have gone through the Great Depression and tough economic times, just really a super strong work ethic family of you're expected to work hard. Like the expectation is just that you're always working hard. Again, for better or for worse, it's just what it was. Yeah. And then, I think philosophically in some way, I grew up in a way where I had a lot of privilege in my life. And I think the older I got and the more I saw of the world, it felt even more urgent to me to be a productive person, because it struck me that privilege is distributed unequally, and you know, there's a responsibility to work to help redistribute that. So I think there's a lot of factors that kind of made me grow up thinking about productivity as a value and a good thing, because you are like, what is it for, right? It's, in my mind, it was, I want to make the world a better place. I want to contribute to being, you know, part of a world looking better. And so therefore it's really important that I'm being productive in order to do that. But also, like, that's not the only reason why one should care about being productive, right? Like, some people would care about being productive because they're supporting themselves and their family, and that's also like a great reason to want to be productive. Like, there's whatever it is your reason is to be productive is also kind of like a really important place to start, right? To understand why productivity even matters to you, because otherwise, no matter what kind of tips and tricks and tools we talk about, if there doesn't seem to kind of be a sense inside. So I don't know if we want to start also by like tapping into your sense of like, why do you care about being productive? And just to go back
Yeah.
and forth or tell me more about that.
I'm going to answer that in a moment, but I think there's something really important that you've just said in answering the question that I want to peel back a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I love this concept. And I think maybe it's more of a question, right? It could be a concept, but maybe it's more of a question. Are people born super productive, super able to just jump into a system and make it more efficient and even understand systems thinking? Or is that something that we learn over time? Are there tools and tricks and hacks, like some of the things that we'll get into in this conversation, that help somebody become more efficient and understand, okay, here's how I can use my time better. Here's how I can
Mhm.
make the best of my resources. Because
Mhm.
I do pretty well with what I have, right? I have always been an A student. So I would find a way to figure it out. But let me tell you something, it's going to take me a little, like a heck of a lot longer to think about how do we make these systems efficient, because my brain don't work that way. Like I'm not
Just
hardwired. No, I want to think about, oh, what's the vision of this thing, right? I want to
Mhm.
get into the question that you're asking me, like the why of something to me is so sexy, it's so appealing. And I want to find the reasons that that is true for me, but then connect with other people. Like I want to ask you, like, oh, what's your why? And then let's connect about that why and build.
Yeah, totally.
That's me. What do we do with that why? How do we use that why to create like the how? That's where I become more challenged. And I think also it's so important for us to identify, like you were talking about the anagram. It doesn't even have to be like an anagram test, but just starting to understand yourself and where your strengths are is so, I found
Mhm.
that to be such a game changer. I don't have to, like, I'm not, why would I have to do all of it? Like, God has created all of us so we can be in community, and like Kate brings her strong sauce and I bring mine, right?
Yeah.
To your question of why, I mean, I do see in my own life, and I like to think about it more from a standpoint of like rituals. Even the words that are in productivity words are not words that speak to me at all.
Mhm.
If I see a podcast and the heading is time productivity, time management, I'm like, that's not for me. even, even though I'm the person who probably needs it the most, right? But if you start talking to me about morning rituals to get your day off or your week started off like a superstar, you're speaking my language. I'm like, yes, please more. Tell me more. You tell
Mhm.
me about
Mhm.
your Sunday wind down routine that
Mhm.
you set up for the week in a really like efficient, and please don't use the word efficient because you're going to lose me, but words that actually seem like, okay, we're setting up the week to have a winning week. That's like, yes, that's my language. So it's just understanding yourself and then also being able to get ahead of yourself. So I'm making fun of myself. Would I click on that? Yes, I would, because I understand they might actually get to those yummy parts. It might not be
Yeah.
packaged in that way for me, but does this answer your question?
No, absolutely. And you're bringing up a point that is to me really essential, and is kind of, you know, something I transitioned into, which was you said something about, you know, what why do I even have to be, you know, so productive, because we all have different skills and
Right.
different people bring different things to the table. And like that is it. I just want to say like that it actually doesn't matter that everybody can be productive or can't be productive. I think there's a million different tools you can use, and some are going to work better for other people versus other folks. But the idea that like it is also true that anything of importance in the world that we achieve, right, is done in teams and in groups and together
Yes.
and in community.
Yes.
And it's okay, like it's okay to to not all be the most efficient person. Um, but this is something that I think as a younger person, you know, growing up teens into my 20s, I was probably hyper productive in a way, and you could probably tell stories about my hyper productivity, but was like to a point that probably would be unhealthy at times, right? Because at a certain point, it's like I'm being productive for what? To what purpose, right? Like, what
Mm,
are the outcomes that matter so much?
mm.
And so I spent time reflecting on this. As you know, I ended up like literally publishing a book that kind of focused on the idea of it actually matters less exactly like what your outcome is and how great you did the outcome. What matters more is the process through which you did it. And so if you're, you know, less productive but have formed better relationships and community and kind of longitudinal impact in what you're doing, that is better than having checked off all your boxes and been super productive for nothing, right? Or
Yeah.
for some smaller things. So that was, I think, you know, an important moment for me. And then what, you know, maybe we can get to after that, so is this realization of kind of like, oh, productivity actually, let's challenge that. Let's challenge that as even that important. And then kind of like the next phase of my life was being forced to walk the talk in hard ways on
Yeah.
that. And like, so, you know, motherhood,
Yes.
becoming a doctor, like there's just all these things that really challenge, you know, to actually put this idea into action that productivity matters, but is not God, right? Like it's not the
Yeah.
most important thing.
And it's not the point
And how
of
do you
life.
build it into your life? No, 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 exactly. Like it's
Productivity is not the point of life. I mean, it took me, I have to say this because I think it's really important and it goes to something that I definitely want to touch on with you, which is the healing work that we have to do from some of the white supremacist ideas that we live in around what productivity are, right? I
Mhm.
really, I mean, I think like you, the first half of my adult life, my young adult life, was so much geared towards this idea of productivity. I actually remember being a young person in all white South African Catholic school, and the words that we wrote down, and I memorized them, hard work brings true joy. If that rings a bell for, yes. But Kate, I internalized that to a level of like, there is no purpose of life and being here outside of producing this hard work, because that's the only way that you can get true joy. And whoo, the levels of like toxicity behind that, the levels of what are you teaching these babies? Like, I needed to save myself as a woman in her 30s from that, to intervene, like to do an
yeah,
intervention myself. And my question
yeah.
to you, what I want to ask is that bit about healing from really toxic messaging that we've received.
Mm,
A lot of
mm,
us, it came from school. It also was
mhm.
doubled down, just institutions all around us. It could have been church. It could have been like church
Yeah.
school, like the Catholic schools that I was going to. This idea of productivity being tied to your worth, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
this healing work that needs to happen. And also, of course, productivity is going to be tied to your work in a heavily capitalist system that is
Yes.
based on white supremacy ideals. And remember, I grew
Yeah.
up in white South Africa, apartheid South Africa,
Mhm.
Calvinist South Africa. So those were 100% aligned with the values that the institutions were broadcasting. And I just want to ask for you, like, what did it mean to interrogate those questions? What did it mean
Yeah.
to begin? I think the healing work is lifelong. And I just want to flag a book that is brilliant, that has helped me and many other people, Resistance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Rest
Mhm.
as
Rest
resistance.
as resistance. Yeah.
And how
Mhm. Mhm.
powerful, I need to remember her name, will come to me, but how powerful that work is in helping us just pause and just ask the question. If you're still the kind of person, if you're listening to this conversation and you still believe that true work, what hard work is true joy, I just want you to ask the question, where does that come from? Just ask that
Mhm.
question. Where does that come from and who's benefiting from that?
Yeah, and have we lifted the curtain to see who's benefiting from that, right? Because that attitude is pervasive. And that's why, I commend you for not immediately clicking on all these productivity podcasts and Instagram posts, right? Because a lot of them are scams and are kind of the machinery of capitalism wanting to make you feel bad
Yeah.
that you're not productive enough. Like it is impressive the power that kind of being surrounded, even still to this day, more into this day than it was in the past, right? Like that messaging is pervasive, that you are valuable because of the work you've produced and how efficiently you produced it. Like that continues to be a dominant narrative in the worlds that you and I live in. And so, yeah, I mean, in terms of when we talk about like healing and kind of or challenging that and then trying to walk the talk of challenging that, I have a few different thoughts to explore. But the first one that you and I can both say a lot about is motherhood, right? Like being
Hey,
a professional person who loves my vocation and loves work, but then getting, having two children who I love more than anything in the world, but like first of all, like, wow, is there a toxic world of parenting out there of like wanting to make you feel bad for not being more productive with your kids, not being a better parent, a more this parent, a more that parent. And so, like, I mostly just like reject, right? Like, I'm constantly unfollowing and like pushing away stuff because like obviously your kids don't care, like your kids
yeah,
don't care how productive you are, they do not care. They care that you're whole and they care that you're present when you're present, that you're present and
yes,
that you're available, right? But like and go and be pregnant, right? It doesn't mean you need to be around your kids all the time, but what your kids care more about in my experience is being able to connect with you, right? And so
yes,
if you're obsessed with the productivity, or if you're not obsessed, but if you're driven or kind of always thinking about, oh, am I doing well enough on this or well enough on that or meeting this benchmark as a parent, you can't simultaneously also just relax and be present and enjoy, or not even enjoy. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes parenting is really hard. Sometimes you're not enjoying it, right? Like sometimes it's a hard thing, but that's important too. And it's like it's okay and doesn't need to be stacked up and measured and checkboxed. Like it's also just fine to leave it and experience it. So in some ways, I feel like I don't want to take away from the conversation about productivity, which we'll get back to, and we'll talk about tools, we'll talk about concrete stuff, but just to acknowledge, right, that there's a lot of life that kind of in order to be successful or reach the goals you have for yourself, you kind of have to actually abandon a lot of that idea of hyperstructure or
yeah,
of production, of producing a thing or producing
yeah.
things. So
It's interesting, Kate. I'll say this. I think I love the example of motherhood that you're bringing up, right? And how it collides and challenges this idea of productivity. I also know that you're a writer and a really fine writer. And I know deeply for myself how much creativity has challenged this idea of productivity. I mean, I think the first time when I got a whiff of like, actually, maybe this ain't gonna cut it. Like the Excel sheets are not going to work over here. And I'm not like I was Excel sheeting my life, but I was trained in this idea that if you have a project, you need to project manage it. And there's
yeah.
probably an Excel sheet. I'm not a brain that thinks in Excel sheets, but trust me, I know my way around it because I've been trained in
Yeah.
this, right? And so when I first started taking my writing super seriously, late 20s, you will laugh, but I had Excel sheets that were trying to clock the productivity of my creativity of, okay, I can write this many hours and this will produce this particular outcome. I wanted to work on a novel, and I was so cocky and sure by the end of that first year, it would be done and it would be a bestseller and it would be amazing. Listen, there's people out there who do that. That was not me. That was not my story. That was not my testimony. Okay. And what humbled me to no end was there's some things in life, and many and maybe most things, where the magic is submitting yourself, right? The magic is
Mhm.
the work is going to the magic is, how can I make myself completely faithful so I am doing what is required of me action wise, but I am not fixated on outcomes. I'm not fixated on controlling, like project managing this. And once I
Mhm.
understood that, then I actually started having a writing life. So I want to throw that out there. But I also want to come to something you said, which is we're going to come back to, productivity and what does it mean and how do we get it done? Because two things can be true at the same time. And one of the things that I see in these internet streets, and please, young people, do not drag me for this, okay? Don't drag me. But yo, you gotta fucking do some work. Like,
Yes,
gotta
yes,
do some fucking work. Like, okay, fine.
yes,
Work does not bring you true joy, but some work is gonna get you closer to your dreams.
yes, yes, yes. But I think you just put it really well as you described kind of your moment of kind of evolution in the space of kind of figuring out what was going to work for you or not, in which you like both are good, like both are okay, right? So like I remember I think you must have been in that space maybe a year after that space, and I was starting to embark on the idea of a creative project. And your advice to me was like, Kate, I know you're gonna make up a spreadsheet about this, but like this isn't gonna like be successful because of the spreadsheet, right? Like creative work doesn't work like that. And that was you like passed that on successfully to me. Like you better believe I still had a spreadsheet, right? Like I still was like I was still organizing my thoughts. But it was very empowering to be like, yeah, like I'm not a prisoner to this, right? Like
Yeah.
there are going to be days where I get nothing done according to the spreadsheet, but I got a lot done, right? Like it's the idea, as you know, like as a writer, as a creative person, you might have to spend a lot of time sometimes in not literally pounding it out the word count and getting everything out and meeting a deadline, but literally like it sounds cliche, but like experiencing the world, like figuring out, observing around you, like figuring out how you're going to make this connection or that connection. And so, writing art, like it is discipline, right? It is, of course it is. It's discipline and it's hard work, and there is joy that can come from that. But it also is not bound by that, right? And so, like, hard work doesn't always look like sitting down at your desk and making
Yes.
yourself write XYZ from this time to this time, or else you failed for the day, right? And yeah, I think that's like that is a really important point about productivity. Again, like what are you trying to be productive for? Like, and in this case, if it's for the, art and exploration and creative work, well, like, yes, absolutely, there's some structure required and you got to put the work in. But at the same time, you also have to like live and experience and not be bound to production in that
Yeah.
way.
You know what I think both motherhood and creativity offer us? They offer us, in challenging this heteronormative idea that we have of what does it mean to work and to work hard, can we flip it on its head and ask the question of what is work? What qualifies as work? Can we challenge the idea of work itself? Because so much of what is asked of us in order to really be good worker bees for creativity is to create white space, right? And that the
Yes.
white
Yes.
space and being a good A+ student in creating, you are working so fucking hard. If your day, that day, is just to go to the museum and to take in the art, that is hard work
Mhm.
alongside, diligently having a daily practice where you're getting up in the morning and doing all the work that is actually the
Mhm.
word count, right? Like making sure you get the words out. Motherhood, same
Mhm.
thing. Like it actually, I mean, playing with my kid, like My son requires hours and hours of the same damn song over and over. Oh God, my head, right? That's what hard work in that context looks like. And we're
Mhm.
not trained
Mhm.
to appreciate that. Our only way of being understanding and counting what hard work is okay, where's the dollars at the end? Because
Mhm.
dollars
Mhm.
ain't no hard work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, no. And I mean, and your point can be expounded on in so many important ways. Like you're bringing up such a crucial thing, which is that you and I both know an enormous amount of the important work that is done every day on this planet is not remunerated or is remunerated horribly, right? And a lot of stuff that gets remunerated really well
Right,
is not doing anything for
right.
the world except for some tiny group of person, people making them more wealthy. So yes, so like thinking about finding the metrics of honoring, labor and work and therefore productivity that isn't going to fit inside the economic system that we've been kind of taught to think it has to fit inside.
Yeah.
But I love how you were saying white space, because as you were saying that, I was thinking in my head of something that is helpful for me to do when I'm trying to, there's an important goal to me. I want to make sure it gets done. Have you heard of time boxing? It's like literally just putting on your calendar whatever thing you do. Like literally, if I spent 15 minutes, if I know I'm gonna need 15 minutes to check my email, like I literally put things on my Google Calendar because it's like I need to do that to know I can't overcommit to multiple things. It's like a realism. It's an exercise in realism to know like there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so many minutes you have and you have to you're going to use them in a certain way.
Yes.
But at the same time, like you also need white
The
space on
white
the calendar. You
space.
also need,
Yes.
yeah. Like, you also like you cannot have every moment of your time. I mean, you can. That's fine. Some people do, but like it's
Yes.
like breathing, right? Breathing in and breathing out. Like if you're always breathing in, you can't breathe out. So
Yes.
it's got to have its reciprocal in
I
some
want
ways.
to
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to talk about exactly the thing that you're bringing up, which is time, which is our most precious resource while we're here on Earth, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thinking about when Michelle Obama, our forever First Lady, was in the White House and all of the reportage that came out about her 5 a.m. starts to the day and how brilliantly she structured the entire 24 hours. And then there were all these memes that went around the internet and in conversation. If she has the same 24 hours in a day, okay, and can get all this done, and it's not about comparison, it just felt good because we loved her. My point is this. I want to know when you think about your week, because okay, now it's story time. I'm gonna tell a story.
Okay.
I remember visiting this woman, y'all, and she was living in Boston at the time. And you weren't yet in medical school. It was just about to come up. And you were a huge health consultant, like consulting to the World Bank and a bunch of other really big deal folks. And you lived in this really quaint and cozy apartment in Boston that I absolutely loved. Gorgeous, just beautiful space. But what stood out to me, I will never forget being in that apartment and being like, this is the most efficient and smart use of space that I have ever seen. Like everything belonged somewhere. Everything had a place where it was like, this is exactly where you hang this particular chain on this particular wall. It has a perfect little thing that holds it up. I don't even know what the name of the thing is, but it was so gratifying. It was grounding to my physicality as the kind of person who really appreciates spaces that are organized. It felt good. It was like I can breathe here, but it also was like a really good use of how do you have white space in a small space, right? Because in a small space, it's easy to just fill it with things and then be overwhelmed with like, oh my God, like how can I find anything? And I was so impressed by that. It stayed with me all of these years, but I've seen it play out in your life in so many different kinds of spaces, like the space of being a medical student, how you thought about cutting up your day in ways that were kind to you and kind to colleagues. Because at some point you became the head, I don't know if they call it the head intern or whatever, but you're
The chief
thinking
resident. Yeah, yeah.
the chief resident, like, how do I use everybody else's time efficiently? We worked together briefly, but gloriously on a literary writing project, and you were doing the same thing, thinking about that space and thinking about how do we use our time together so that it feels roomy and it feels spacious. My question, finally get a question here. My question to you is, when you think about the week ahead, when you think about the day ahead, when you think about the hours ahead, right? How do you make sense of it? Like, you started sharing specifically blocking out time on your calendar. What are the other, like, walk us through. How do you put it together like a chef?
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. That's so fascinating to time travel back into that moment in my life, and I am thinking of that, like, little small apartment. And I have to give a shout out to New York City before Boston for like teaching me how to make use of small spaces.
Yes.
But the idea, I think probably if I'm, like translating that to what that means in my life, like you were saying, like time's finite, right? And I think especially after going through medical training and working as a physician, I'm in internal medicine, and so we see kind of a diversity of things. But like I do not take the fact that I'm alive and well for granted, right? Like to be kind of constantly reminded at how finite time is, and how we have very little control sometimes over ultimately how much time we get.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just a constant energy that exists in me, that kind of prompts me, perhaps even unconsciously sometimes, to want to both kind of make the most out of the time I have, but also be respectful and relationship focused, right? And so it's not kind of making the most out of the time so that we can have achieved X, Y, or Z. It's partly about that, right? It might be respecting the project or the work we're on, but it's also about like, are we still intact and are we still whole at the end of this? And you and I, we don't have to go into great detail, but I know you and I both shared that sentiment in the project we were working on, is like us as a team and our values and what we stand for matters, right? Like, and it's that, then that sometimes will come to heads with the idea of the productivity or the production. But yeah, so I guess, so in terms of to answer your question, if I look at the week ahead or how it's going to go, what I always come back to is the idea of commitments, and you can only have so many, right? Like you can only have so many to so many people. I am very committed to my family, my husband, my kids. I'm very committed to the hospital that I'm working at here in Caracas. I have an NGO where I'm also contributing. So I kind of have like my spheres of contribution and commitment, where I feel like I have kind of this idea of scheduled days or scheduled times or general time frames where I know I'm committed. And so, when I'm at the hospital, like I'm not mom, right? Like I'm not the one who's around to be there and doing everything with the kids. When I'm in my committed time with my kids, I'm not, aside from an emergency, if someone needs to call and has an emergency question, I'm not going to be running away to go put out fires. And I think respecting your commitments is like a really core part of looking at the week ahead and figuring out. So you kind of like big picture time blocking of, this half day or that half day or this evening or that morning of where you're going to be. You can't always exactly predict exactly how exactly the time will go within that, but you can commit yourself to being there and being present and committed within it. And then kind of like the longitudinalness of, anytime there's some big, within a big project, there's multiple small projects. With every small project, there's even multiple smaller projects. So, like having a general sense of what I'm hoping gets done by the end of the week, but also not feeling imprisoned by it or feeling, because, another sentiment I was going to share that we have a third in our trio of a writing group we've been lucky to have for a lot of years. Tylee had a great analogy for me once when we were talking about some of these themes of like the ocean goes in and out, right? There's high tide and there's low tide, and you don't control that. You can do the best you can when it's high tide to take advantage of this high tide. And when it's low tide, right? Like you, so like the idea that you kind of like respect that there's gonna be some weeks where the energy is right and everything's good and it falls into place and you get maybe even more done that you thought were gonna get done. And then there's other weeks where despite how hard you worked and how much you planned, it's just not gonna get done and you deal with it, right? And that's okay too. Like that forgiveness of not needing to be stuck to something that way.
Can I ask you something? And
Yeah,
it's such a juicy thing to ask you specifically because I am one of those people, if I write it down, this is what I want to do this week, right? Here's my goal. I am working on this. I can be really hard on myself at the end of the week of that thing. Like, I love a good tick, okay?
yeah.
My calendar.
Flex that muscle. That muscle feels good.
Motion everywhere. Like if you're listening to this, it's the tick motion for me. Like I'm telling you something, that stuff is so deeply programmed in my brain. I love to tick something off. And if I cannot tick it off, it is a hard thing for me, right? But what I want to ask you, and I'm especially excited to ask because you're a doctor and you understand our biology. Once I became smarter in my adulthood around actually my biology does not match up to our society's expectations of my productivity, right? I definitely I don't even know what it is on the cycle, but just before the period comes, honey, like she don't want to touch nothing. She to be like on a resort and bring me my food on a chalet because I don't understand why I gotta work for anything. And I'm curious for you, as someone who understands that biology, like number one, do you bake something into your expectations for yourself because you understand the natural rhythms of a human woman body? And also, can you talk to that? Like,
Yeah.
what is it that's happening in our bodies? And it doesn't have to be all deep, like super science and everything, but I'm just curious, like, how do you hold those two things, given your training as a doctor in science and understanding the true biology of what happens in
Mhm.
female anatomy, right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
also your deep, I mean, this is also a kind of research that you have done through organizations, but then also through lived experience of operations and how do we get our goals and achieve our dreams. We need to
Yeah.
have systems. Hey, pull up. Just you and me for a second. Are you an exec, a founder, or an entrepreneur who's sick of shrinking in rooms you're overqualified to lead? It's time to stop playing small and start owning your expertise. But how, Machochodi? Girl, I got you. I offer coaching that helps women of color just like you to claim your place as a thought leader. Whether you want to command a room, craft and share your signature story, or finally get that book out of your head and onto bookshelves, I've got the strategy and spicy accountability that you need. If you're tired of seeing less qualified folks shine while you stay behind the scenes, girl, the wait list is open. Follow the link in show notes to stop waiting for permission and claim your VIP spot now. My mission? Helping women just like you to snatch the spotlight, shake the table, and take your damn seat at the top already. No begging, no detours, and nope, no apologies. Just bold ass moves.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, you're bringing up so many good points. Like absolutely yes. Like these rhythms are just so innate to being a human being, especially women in hormonal cycles and changes. And like strap in because perimenopause is down the road and like it's gonna get wilder. Like, sorry. Like it's
Already just
it's
gotten used to this, not more.
sorry. Sorry. But like it is wild, right? And so a couple of things I want to say about that is to remind us that like humans were never meant to be so rigid, right? Like, in nor to be so individual, right? That like you have to do everything and you have to be that is the world we live in. That's the expectation we live in, right? That the single person is super productive. But like you better believe that like that was accounted for by communities of people and teams of people working together, because not everybody's going to be the best, right? Like more ancient humans understood that better than we do now. But that's kind of, I think, is coming back in some ways, in some of the, ways that you and I are building our life, or other people around us. Like the idea that community matters and being surrounded by people matters, and having people you can lean on matters, because you will not always be able to do things. And that's on the good days, right? That's on when like, your
Yes.
body's healthy and you're okay. Um, and so, I would say like philosophically speaking, I think like surrounding yourself, like being in community with people is very important. Uh, More practically, trick speaking, is that like one thing I try to be very good at is, if I know like this just isn't going to get done, right? I still I'll like drag that calendar item to another week. I literally just be like,
Yes.
like it's still somewhere, like it's still in my
Yes.
consciousness somewhere that it's got to happen,
Yes.
but it's not gonna happen now. Like, and that's okay. So it allows me to relax, because I know that like I've accounted for it somewhere, right? Like it's in my, everyone has a different system. I use Google Calendar as like my way to organize my life and my to-dos and how I think about what has to get done. But I just move it. I just move it. And obviously, like there's things in life you can move and things in life you can't move, obviously, right? Like whether it's certain personal relationships or family things, or whether it might be like myself as a physician, there might be things that I can't move and I have to get done. That's fine. And you grind and you get it done if you have to, right? But there's a lot of things that we have more wiggle room on, that we have more capacity to say, and I think we should be a little bit better at that. Like you said, like this balance between wanting hard work to be like honored and recognized, and it is like a good thing to like put yourself into a vocation or an activity or an art, like that's good. But at the same time, being able to say like, yeah, I can't get that to you this time, right? Like that's just not, I'll be able to get it to you by this day instead of that. Like to make
Yes.
that be such less of a big deal, to be like, yeah, okay, no worries, to not be so rigid about everything. I think I understand, especially in the medical field, you can't always be like that. Sometimes you absolutely do need to follow certain things, but where you can be more forgiving and open and realistic, one should
Yeah.
be.
I love this, and I want to say this louder for the person who's listening, okay? My sister tells me all the time, it's not that important, okay? It's cute what you're doing, but you're not out here saving lives. You're not. And if the woman who is out here saving lives, folks, can move the calendar forward and say, like, this thing, it's nice and it's an important priority to me. I want to get to it, but it's okay. It's okay. Like the sourdough can rise next week. It doesn't have to rise this week.
Mhm.
If this woman
Mhm.
can do that and she's literally saving lives, I mean, like the compassion that has to come into calendars, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that comes there, there's a little micromanaging that comes with that. And that comes back to this topic we were discussing about your idea, like your commitments you have to certain people or
Yes.
certain places. So when I'm at the hospital, I'm at the hospital, right? I'm there. Like whatever people need, I'm there. I'm doing it, I'm
Yes.
present, whatever. But that's different than, I have a research project that I'm working on that's interesting. There's not a formal deadline, but I'm kind of forcing myself to have it done because I want to have it done. Like those are the spaces where we can kind of relax a little bit and say, this is important to me. But if I know that me being in the right mindset, I can do this all in 1 hour. And when
Mm.
I'm not in the right mindset, it's going to take me 5 hours. I am going to wait a week and do it when I'm in the right mindset. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste other people's time. When we have the flexibility to do that, that's should be taken advantage of
Love
and
that.
leaned into.
I love that.
Yeah.
Tell me about rituals. Tell me about your mornings. Tell me about your evenings. Do you have rituals? Are there certain things that you're doing almost every day that feel like this just keeps me grounded and keeps me whole so that I'm on top of all the many different roles in my life?
I, I don't have anything too rigid, but I do kind of have a couple of general principles that have become important to me. I start and end my kids' day with my kids. Like that to me is super important. That you know, the first 30 minutes, an hour of my kid's day, we're together and I'm with them and I'm present and we're talking and we're breakfast, driving to school. Like that's kind of like, I'm not going to let stuff interrupt that. I'm not going to, again, unless it's some emergency or something comes up. And at the end of the day, you know, we sit in bed together, we read, we talk about the day, like capping the day, or at least they're starting into their day, to me is kind of ritual in the sense that with that, with, you know, very few exceptions, that's kind of how it's framed. And I like that because I just like the idea of that connection of feeling like, you know, my two kids are now at school during the day, and so there's all sorts of things they're experiencing and they're doing, but to have that, you know, safety, security, love, that idea that, you know, I'm going to start and end the day with someone who thinks I'm great and who cares about me and who I love, like that to me is, and it, you know, it's a whole other topic, but I have two little boys, right? And I think it's, to me, feels even more urgent that
Mm,
I'm raising boys who are comfortable talking about their feelings. If they have feelings that are uncomfortable, that they can figure out how to work through that. So, you know, those things, because the thing is, none of us as parents are going to be able to be on top of every little detail all the time, but I guess I see this as like laying a groundwork for the future of, you know, there's no specific kind of like, I read this type of book or this many minutes, or I do this, or there's no kind of like recipe to it, but just the idea that we're together, like
together. Yeah.
happening. And then I would say on the flip side of that, kind of like the professional vocation part of me, is that I usually do every night, usually after the kids go to bed, I do look at the next day that I have my calendar. I just kind of say like, okay, is this realistic? Does this seem like this is all gonna get done? Remind myself what is important to make sure happens tomorrow. And if it see like, oh yeah, I was really over ambitious with this, like do
Yeah.
myself the favor of like fixing the day before the day starts. And yeah, that's kind of I think like the general principles of how I think about, I wouldn't say I have any other kind of like really specific rituals I go through, but that, you know, wanting to respect my own time or other people's time, just making sure it all seems, yeah, I do that almost every evening.
I really appreciate that. I think that's a learning for me. The idea that just because it's in the calendar, I'm not, there's no like, school principal with the red pen who's coming to say every single day you have to stick to this. Maybe that's a place where we can practice compassion, right? By
Yeah, yeah,
revisiting at the end of the day and saying, is this realistic for tomorrow? Because I
yeah.
tend to be very black and white. Once it's in there, I will like work really, just be very hard on myself about trying to make it happen, even when it's clear like that's not realistic. I don't know what the heck. Right now, I'm going through that, right? I have a huge, ambitious thing I'm trying to do in my business, and I totally underestimated how much time that would be. And what I did, I will admit it, on Saturday, I don't work usually on the weekends, but this Saturday I did work to make up those hours. And what I want to be better at is actually being like, actually, maybe you just overestimated the scope of that project. Maybe it's going to be a little bit slower as opposed to needing to work on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I want to switch
Mm-hmm.
gears because you did start with this really sacred time of your children, right? The beginning and the end, and that mirrors my household. I want to talk about something that I think is important to just be transparent about as well, how we manage our households and the
Mm-hmm.
kind of care and help that we have in order to be completely efficient, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I'll say this for myself, one of the things that definitely drove me out of the United States to seek greener pastures elsewhere is I just could not take the lack of child care that is made available to working moms. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that given where my family is, we needed a fuckload more support than was officially
Mm-hmm.
available. And by that, I should just be clear. If you're not in the United States, you don't understand what I'm talking about. If you live in the States and you're a working mom, unless you're able to pay pretty much like, I mean, I know people who work so that they can fork the check over for childcare. That's pretty much what's expected for most middle income households in the States. And my family and I, we decided like this makes no sense. Let's move to somewhere where we can have a more supportive infrastructure. And for me, I had grown up with a lot of help in the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the model that I use. I have a full-time nanny for my baby. I have somebody who comes and helps with house care. I I take the laundry out. So I've outsourced laundry. That's not something I'm personally responsible for. And I
Mhm.
I want to normalize not only
Mhm.
talking about that, but also
Mhm.
understand the same way we're talking about white space that allows us to be worker bees. I have my air quotations up. The so-called work, like white space is part of work. Care is part of work. And whatever you
Yeah.
have in your house that is providing that care, whoever you have, that's part of the conversation of productivity. Like, stop pretending you can be super productive and you have fucking two nannies. And like you're not
Mhm.
talking about that part. And like that's what allows you to be in the gym at 4:30 a.m. Like stop.
Mhm. Mhm. Protected space, right? Protected space and time
Yeah.
is a cornerstone of any type of work, right? And that does not happen when you don't have support. Literally other human beings helping you to run your household, raise your kids, right? Like, and that absolutely is important. I grew up with that being like not a reality at all. Like I grew up in a middle class family in Rhode Island in the United States. Both my parents worked when we were much younger. My mom didn't work in order to be home, then went back to work. And I just had no concept of what it would mean to have someone working in my home, period. So I live in Caracas, Venezuela, and it is absolutely a norm to have. I have a nanny for my kids, someone who'll help me with house chores. So it was like very difficult for me to be open to that idea, first of all, right? Because it like ran contrary in my mind as if I wasn't able to do my own work or that was a bad thing, right? Like that was somehow a negative or made me not a hard worker because I couldn't do it all. And I've really had to like wrestle to reframe the idea of that's what allows me, right, to
Yes.
do the work that I am trained to do, that I have skills to do, that that's my contribution to the world. But with it, and I know you'll dive in with me on this, like it's also really important to acknowledge like this is also a class conversation, right? Like a
Us.
lot of folks in the world have zero access to this. So most people in the United States, right? Unless you're like really wealthy in the United States, the economy is such that nobody has access to this. And the norm, even for middle or even to some degree upper middle class families, right? Like you don't have help. You're stuck doing everything by yourself. And in other parts of the world, economically speaking, like I'm in a different economic class, having moved to a different country, right? And
Yes.
so it's just important to acknowledge that the gratitude for that, understanding what that means. But I think about that a lot raising my kids. So like I want to make sure as my kids grow up, seeing like both, I think it's a great plus that they see me working and being a professional and contributing to the world, but understanding that like that's possible thanks to labor
Yes.
from other people and making sure that's all framed in a
Yes.
responsible way for them, if that makes sense. Like, so it's not that they think they deserve this or that they're just, this is how the world works and it revolves around them, but kind of like to the extent we can be clear even with kids about some of these realities, I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, this conversation came up and we touched on it some. I had a conversation with Alicia, who's an amazing dear friend as well, lives in Panama and also raised in the United States like yourself. And one of the things that we were talking about, we were also wrestling. So if somebody's really interested in this, I highly encourage you to listen to that conversation too. What we wrestled with in that conversation was, yes, it's a class, but it's also norms and expectations, cultural norms and expectations.
Sure.
So I
Sure.
grew up with so much help in the household, single mom household, my most of my life. My dad died when I was 9. And also my mother was like hustler number 0, okay? In terms of economic bracket, this was not a wealthy household by such a long stretch. Every penny was accounted for, but the norm, the cultural norm was completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Most folks who were our peers had help. Does that mean
Mhm.
we were the bottom? Clearly, we weren't at the very bottom of the economic rung, right? So even there was a conversation around class. But I want to
Okay.
acknowledge that the expectations and the cultural norms that are true in the States, they're not the norms around the world. A lot of
Right.
people, I mean, the folks that who we were supporting in our household, that we were creating opportunities, they came and they provided care for my sisters and I. When they went back to their rural areas, they were in a position to hire help if they wanted that, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
class,
Mm-hmm.
class is
Mm-hmm.
very layered and it's also very nuanced according to different cultures and what places look like. Very different
Yeah.
conversation. I'm glad you raised it because I know that definitely impacts our story of what productivity looks like. And it's part of why
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be transparent and to say, in order for me to be so efficient and to get so much done, including my self-care, right? Let's that. I
Mm-hmm.
have a block every single day on my calendar that's like, you can't really disturb me until 10:30 because not only am I with my family, I'm also taking care of me. Like I run, I do Pilates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think is happening at that time at a household level? It's like somebody's providing
Mm-hmm.
care, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Mm-hmm.
really important thing to be honest about.
Absolutely. No, and I'm so with you that the cultural norms can be different, and it is something to really traverse and have to be able to be open about. And it's not that, one culture is right and the other culture is wrong. Like there's some things that are of value in each. But I will say that I think to a to a detriment in the United States, there is kind of this idea that, you're responsible, like you as an individual are responsible for what, for your family, for what you can do for your home. And that is just not the case in other, living here in Venezuela, but also having lived in and visited other countries as well, where there's almost an assumption that doesn't exist in the US of, like, of course it's okay to rely on other people, right? Like, of course
Yeah.
we work together. And of course, like, I'll ask you for the favor to come do this. And I know that one day you'll ask me for a favor. It'll all even out. We're not worried. It feels a little bit more in the US, like everything's a little bit more kind of ledgered, as though, I owe you this, as opposed to being more open and kind of worrying less about how it all kind of works out in details, but just knowing that that's culturally okay. And that was something I had to get my head around, leaving the United States and not having grown up like that.
One of the things, Kate, I'm so glad you say that because one of the things I think is really complicated and honestly toxic for women, especially, and especially working moms, is this idea that is perpetuated in the States, but also many cultures around the world that align themselves with the States. How much you are expected to have it all, right? Like the woman who gets it all done, the woman who has it all figured out. And part of me checking out of the United States was me saying, in order for me to be my most productive, but also my most whole self, I reject this. Like, I do not want to be the woman who, like, that is such a fallacy. And the thing that I think is most dangerous is that we don't talk about what the cost is to that woman. Like, the only way that that works is if you're willing to break your ass. Like, either
Yeah.
your physicality is going to break down, or
Mm-hmm.
up here, like the brain is just gonna
Mm-hmm.
give out and be like, girl, psh, bye. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
here for this. Mental health breakdowns and all kinds of things
Mm-hmm.
is we ask for way too much. Way, way,
Mm-hmm.
way too much. Like doing it all in your professional life, doing it all in your social life. I mean, let's talk about that. I don't even like what? And then also doing it all in your home life, like that is bonkers.
Right. Correct. Correct. Absolutely. I mean, even the very like notion of the idea of doing it all is very American, right? Like, what does it even mean, right? Like, let's just like do some things, right? Like, what's the obsession with all, right? Like, but it is. It's a very American obsession, and as you point out rightfully, like the danger of that is that it's ultimately all very superficial, right?
Yes.
It isn't actually about doing it all. It's about the perception that you're
Okay.
doing it all,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
and like there
Lack
are
of
ways that
transparency
like
around how I get it all done.
yeah.
And that's the thing that I think we need to create more space, being honest with one another around, girl,
Yeah.
actually, I hired somebody for that, right? And I see
Yeah.
more being normalized in the United States. There's a brilliant woman who is a business coach, and part of her, I don't agree with everything that she says, Rachel Rogers, but I do think, especially for Black and Brown women, her encouraging people to just consider you can have help in the home. I think it's a game changer, especially for Black and Brown women who may need in the United States a lot more just mental, okay, this is a thing that I can do to just let me
Mm-hmm.
little bit better so I can show up at life with more to give, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Before
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
start wrapping up here, I want to quickly, as quickly as we can, um, I want to talk about systems design, which is something that's very different from, again, how my brain works. But I know that this is how you work and think about operations when you walk into an organization. Before you even start a project, where's your head? How do you wrap your head around a project? And what are some of the tools for someone like me who's completely layperson and easily overwhelmed by systems, but understands the power of systems? I think the older I've become, the more I understand like these are really powerful. What would you, how would you school me?
No, yeah, totally. I think that a key message I hope gets across from this conversation today is that ultimately what matters is what matters to you, and that might be different from what matters to somebody else, right? So when we say like how I can get this project done, first of all, make sure that whatever it is you're about to embark on, like is centered in something that really matters to you and that you really believe in, right? Because you might have to go to the ropes for it, you might have to sacrifice for it. So like first align yourself. We're not gonna do every single project that comes to our mind. We might not be able to take every opportunity that comes our way. But if you're going to take one, first of all, like really feel like, yes, this is something that I'd put something on the line for it and I want to do. And then to me, it's all about like realism, like achievability, right? So, we all should dream a little. We should not be afraid to like have big dreams. In your or my case, it might be, writing a next book or some kind of big project or which might seem in a moment like, oh, I don't know how I'm gonna get there, it's so far away. But it's also like dreaming is good, but also like realistic, right? Like I'm not going to get this out in the next year or whatever the case is. Like having kind of a big picture mentality of what's realistic. Um, while being open to the idea that like there's always factors out of our control that are changing in our work environment, our day environment, which might make it more likely for the thing to happen or less likely for the thing to happen, and to kind of like have in your mind that that's a realistic force too. But just having kind of achievable and measurable ideas. So whatever the project is, dividing it up into like what piece of this is like really tangible and like I know I can get there, or rather, I should say, what is the ultimate goal? Like, what would you ultimately like to get to? And then what are the kind of 3 or 4 like bigger picture tangible things that have to happen to get there? And it's I don't know, for me, it's all about like subtasking things out and breaking it up into tangible things, right? Because, you know, we all have dreams or projects or things we want to get done. But I emphasize again, it's so important that your why is really clear, because it might be that you have a clear why and then you set up your project. It might turn out that that project ultimately isn't the way to get your why done, and you don't realize that until getting a few rejections or getting a few nudges from the universe in a different direction. And like that's okay too. It's also okay that things change as long as you're honoring the spirit of what you want to do, right? Like it doesn't mean give up on your dreams. It doesn't mean say no to things or give up easily, or if you get a rejection, it means it's not meant for you. That's not what I mean to say. I just mean to say that the universe nudges us sometimes in what's right for us at the moment or what's not right for us in the moment. And there might be a thing where we want it really bad and it might just not be the moment for it. Doesn't mean we're not going to get it. Like we very well might get it, but like it's okay to also be patient and just keep it in mind, know what you have to do to get there, but don't, give up so easily. But I mean, for me, it's a lot of like that, like other little tips and tricks. Like I try to make things, the easy things, as easy as possible so that my brain's free to work on the hard stuff. So I don't know if I've started using like artificial intelligence to like produce kind of like silly early draft, like things that otherwise would have taken time and minutes for me to put together. I can now use a tool to put something together and then use my actual critical thinking and brain power to go through and fix something to be my own. Like the idea of, time boxing, we kind of talked about, like being realistic and getting to know yourself about, how long things take you to get done, and being realistic with yourself about that. Like, you put it on your calendar for 15 minutes, but it's going to take you an hour and a half, right? Like just put it on your calendar for an hour and a half. Don't like, and then if you get done sooner, great, you have extra time, but like being realistic about it.
Speaking of
Yeah,
make,
to make something, yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Speaking of making easy things easy, can you talk a little bit more about that, especially if there's specific tools that you use that make things like time management a little bit easier? I love that you talked about AI and how AI can take tasks that used to take a really long time and whittle them down for us. On YouTube, I rely so heavily on AI to help me with things like how is this particular title? Can I make it more optimized? Can you
Mm-hmm.
come up with a description? I use Chat GPT for that. Can you come up with a description that I put in the chat, the description box? And for me, it's really important. Of course, I go in there and I use my own language to make it sound like myself, but I am so much more wedded to the idea. This is really important to me, actually, as a writer. I'm not going to waste my time, my precious creative writing juice and time over things that are about efficiency and getting information out versus the hours in the morning when I'm working on a novel where I really need to use my brain at a there's no chat GPT in that. It's all chat mahohori, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
those hours, like let's take away there's no tools, there's no AI. But then in the moments, like you say, where there's no reason here why we can't. I think sometimes people feel an uneasiness about tools because they're intimidated about what does it mean for my creativity? What does it mean for my personality? But for me, those are some of the litmus tests that I use.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a conversation that is going to continue to evolve. Use of AI, ethical use of AI. But to me, I have kind of zero qualms or zero problem with um having AI as a assistant administrator for
Yes.
me to put together,
Yes.
especially because, like you said, like I've got brain power for specific things, right? Like I'm really well trained on certain things, and I'm going
Yes.
to use as much of
Yes.
that power as I can on the things I'm good at and the things I have special training for, right? So I'm not going to care about like, like put together an outline for me for this thing. Obviously, I'm going back and I'm going through and I'm making it my obviously. But it
Yes.
is way faster, right, to do that than to start from a white page, start from scratch, and put everything together. And someone might argue, oh, well, you're taking out your uniqueness, your creativity, or whatever. There's a lot of kind of protocol. It's what we're talking about, right? Like we're not talking about writing your novel this way. We're not talking about the conversation I'm going to have with a patient or the way I'm
Right.
thinking through this diagnosis. Like we're not talking about that. We're talking about literally administrative things that I do the same anyway, right? Like
Yes.
it's just an assistant. It's another example of an assistant.
Yeah.
Um, a couple other quick things. This is like the enemy, right? Like, like if I'm really serious about want to get something done, I just throw my phone in another room, right? Like, because I will check it, I will hear messages coming in. And again, that comes back to this idea of like commitment. Like, if I've got the time booked for writing for 2 hours, like I have to honor that. I have to be there and do that. And again, unless there's some emergency and somebody's reaching me, it's not going to be, writing and looking, writing and look, right? Like it's got, so the phone away. And then something that I can't remember where I picked this up, but like also be good to yourself. Like it can also be hard to sit down and like really hardcore focus. Sometimes you have good days and it's easy and you can sit for a couple hours and work. But if it's tough, just like commit yourself to like 20 minutes and then I'm going to take a break, right? Like, and tell yourself that and kind of have a pattern of I'm not going to break this commitment after the 20 minutes, but yes, then I'm going to step away from it.
That's so good.
Um, yeah, and just, we talked about this before, but like definitely like compassionate growth mindset with everything in the terms of like there's nothing about this near where you need to be perfect all the time or have it down all the time. There's going to be days where it just doesn't go well and you're not going to get anything done you want to go done. And that's fine. Just like if you want to think about what went wrong, what you can do better, great. And also like just keep growing, just keep moving. Don't get too bogged down. There's always going to be days and moments when things aren't going to all come together. And like that's fine. If you're in the spirit of I'm here to kind of show my commitment to this project or this work in this moment, and I did my best and it was just couldn't do it today. You did your best. You couldn't do it today. That's okay. Like that's also okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like only.
Kate, that is I think that is one of the most important and beautiful things. And I've seen this over many, many years of loving you and knowing you, understanding how perfectionism is the enemy ultimately of productivity, right? And
Mhm.
I can say this for myself. I'm definitely the kind of person who in the past has strived for perfection, and not a kind of perfection where I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be perfect today, right? But where you hold yourself to standards that are really unrealistic standards. And now where I am in my life is, can I be consistent? Which means
Mhm.
there's going to be plenty of days where the balls are dropped, and that's fine. But can I
Mhm.
just be consistent where I'm just coming back to it again and again, which is what I hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. And also kind of, and I echo you and reflect you. Like I also had so many years where that was kind of this driving force of wanting to get it right. And I want to kind of say like that's also okay and like honor that part of you that wanted to do it
Mhm.
because there was a reason, right? Like there was a reason you wanted to get all right. And
Mhm.
me knowing you, like it's because you cared. It's because you cared about
Right.
important things and you actually wanted to do good for you wanted something good to come of it all. So like it came from a very good place. So like keeping the idea of like honoring the part of you that really was striving to whatever it was at the moment, maybe it was more of an external wanting to help or make better an external situation, or whether it's
I will
a,
say
a
this.
creative project.
I do want
Yeah.
to say this, Kate, because I think it's important for people like us. Yes, I am a caring person. Yes, I did want to affect things in the world that were beyond myself. But let's be honest, like I also just wanted the fucking gold star. I'm just that person, you know?
Well, and also that's can be cultural too in terms of indoctrination of like
Yeah,
what you're meant to think that you're
yes,
supposed to be doing, right? And like
yes.
that is how society values you, and that is how like a cycle, right? Of like,
Right.
oh yeah, and you and I both rose through certain ranks, right? Like we
Yeah,
both were allowed in certain rooms, and that like it yields. Like, so it's like we were doing it and it was working. So that's all good. That's all so good, but also like you can step away at any time and you are so worthy and you are such a good human, right? Like it's also your worth not tied to it. And it can be so
yes.
tempting to feel your worth tied to it. And
Yeah,
it's
and
not.
also to have some self-awareness in it. I think that's really important to be able to know that I am a gold star digger all day. Like there's a part of me that like needs that gold star from the principal. And sometimes that's great because it served me, but it doesn't always serve me every day. Um, and just
Right, right.
understanding the moments when it's important to like say, okay, this is a moment where the gold star really matters. Like when I'm with my
Yeah.
child, I want him to give me a gold star, like that moment, you know?
Yeah.
So when I'm
Yeah.
like putting together an agenda for this meeting, whatever. Like I don't need a gold star. Good is what is it? Good is better than done. Done is better than perfect.
Done. Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, and as you're saying, I love the phrasing of is this serving me or is this not serving me? Because sometimes it will, and that's great, and it can be healthy. Sometimes that can be fine and motivating and great. And a lot of other times it's not. And like you said, the self-awareness to kind of be able to tell the difference between those scenarios. And it can take time sometimes, or there can be scenarios that seem on the surface like, this is the right time to employ this, and then you realize it's not, but evolving and growing and kind of figuring yourself out, and when that's a motivating kind of positive force that's allowing you to grow in your own personal journey of where you'd like to be and be growing, and when it's actually detracting from that and getting you off that course of where you'd like to be going.
Yeah. So, in closing, I want to share something that's really powerful that you taught me that I hope is something useful for whoever is with us in this conversation. First of all, thank you so much for joining us and being our third girlfriend here. I'm offering this, and I'm going to ask you, Kate, a question yourself. And I want to acknowledge how powerful this has been to me because it's helped me understand this most precious resource that we have, our time, right? If
Mhm.
productivity is about anything that is healthy, it's about understanding what am I doing with my time here on earth. That is not about producing nuggets or widgets that are good for the economy or for the market. No, it's just about what is the things, your why, what you spoke about so beautifully, Kate, like being really clear on your why and what are you channeling your energies and your time towards so that you can achieve the why that matters the most to you. You said to me years and years ago that I'm going to paraphrase, but you said that integrity is the commitments that we make to ourselves. I don't know if you remember saying that, but that really stuck with me. It really, really, it matters to me and it stuck with me. And the reason why is because it helped me not only become really good and deeper at accounting with and for myself, but it goes to this thing of like, okay, but what am I committed to, right? Like, what's my why? And what's the large picture here? Like, if I only have so much time on earth, the time that I'm committing to me, to the things that I'm like, this is the most important, precious thing to me. That's how I get to express my integrity. And not only do I love that, like it really served me at that moment. I needed to hear it, and it became something that I use all the time to be like, okay, where's the integrity here? Like, what are we committed to, and how do we show up for ourselves to hold
Mhm.
ourselves accountable? I'm
Mhm.
curious for you right now, what does integrity feel like towards this huge question of like me here on earth? Where am I?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's kind of like I feel like old me talking to current me in a way that's like, okay, all right. It's a great message to hear right now at this moment. And I think that, gosh, like especially particularly at the moment in time we're in
Mm,
history with things that are going on in the world, like the idea of striving for integrity or having that as something you care about. Like, first of all, thank you for closing on that note. Like, I think it's a really important note. The way, honestly, the way that it makes sense to me is through this lens of commitment. So both kind of commitment to myself, but also the things I've decided I'm going to be committed to. And I think as years have passed in my life, I've realized that ultimately that can only be a couple of things, right? And
mm,
so, and that's like
yes.
okay, and choose wisely. Um, and it's a much used expression, but saying no to one thing is saying yes to my commitment thing, right? And so it's I certainly think I had a lot of years where really wanting to say yes to a lot of things to not miss out on chances to be helpful to people, to be there for everyone. And that can come from a good place, but ultimately, eventually could compromise your integrity, your ability to maintain that integrity. And so, yeah, I think you use the word, I think you use the word reliability or like, so like that's also important, right? Like you're focused on the things that you said you would be committed to, and you're reliable in those things, and the folks who you're involved with in those things know they can count on you. Like that to me also, like, and longitudinally, right? Like it's not necessarily just the fun, exciting thing I'm doing now, but as you and I know, like things when you commit to things over a long period of time, like you're in it for the slog sometimes. Like there's going to be really moments of joy and really moments of discomfort or even pain, and like you're in it for all of it. I think that's also part of what I think about with integrity is like you're just accepting that there's also going to be parts of it that are not fun or that are not uplifting. And that comes with it, right? Like that's also part of getting to the points that are uplifting and inspiring. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah, integrity to the commitments we make to ourselves and to each other. definitely sums it up for me of why productivity matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
My
sure.
God. And that's a podcast title I will click on any day. Everything that we make to ourselves and to each other commitments. Yes, I'm here for that. And before we go, I do want to note something that I think is so important, which I know you have your own way, and I want to hear what your way of experiencing this is. We've spoken so much about productivity and commitment at the 500-foot scale. I'm sorry, some of the American expressionisms, I'm not like,
Got you. Yeah. Same.
Okay, one of the things that's become really important to me, especially starting in my 30s, where mental health became important to me, is understanding daily joy as something I need to schedule in and something that needs to be part of my productivity, quote unquote, productive. And I don't know how you do it, but for me, it's not necessarily always scheduled like a very specific, because that's not the kind of person I am, right? It's like sometimes it is like I have on my schedule, I know that this cool thing is going to happen, like this conversation today, definitely joy, definitely scheduled. But like the moments of like, let's just dance with my son and like act stupid, let's make funny faces, like that is 100% part of the point of my life, at least.
Yeah, 100%. To me, I feel like the only way I've been able to achieve that is this idea of like committing to be present at the things that I've agreed to be present at. And like in the same way that our time is a very precious and limited commodity, so is our attention, right? And that's kind of the world we live in, is constantly trying to distract it. And so yeah, I think that for me is kind of like the practice of presence. Like I'm committed, like whatever I'm signed up for, like that's where I am and that's what I'm doing. And that wasn't always the case. I think when I was younger, I think I would like very much like multitasking felt like this value of like, oh, I'm so good at, yeah, like I can do so much, I can get so much done. And you know, part of our lives as moms and professionals, whatever, is multitasking. It's fine. But like the idea that, you know, to the best extent I can, just agreeing to be like not going to worry about XYZ that I kind of am worried about, but really gonna like put it out of my head for the next few hours because I'm here and that's what I'm doing, and boom, like yeah, that's.
You get a gold star, okay?
and you for both of us.
If you can do that, if you can muster that one thing and nothing else, you have a life gold star.
It's
in the moment. That is a life gold star. Remember nothing else. Just be present for the thing that you're committed to right now. Gold, 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 gold. That's
the goal. The goal. It's hard. It is difficult to achieve, but it is ultimately, yeah, the goal.
Thank you so much, Kate. You seriously do get a gold star for this conversation. We hit so many beautiful, unexpected, wise, delicious, like gratifying places. Thank you so much. I have notes upon notes here. Diary is full. I'm excited. And I hope if you're joined us here that you got something really useful. Hit us up in comments. Let us know what are some of the tools that you're most excited to try in your own life. And also, what are the tools that we may be missing that you use in your life? What does your morning ritual look like? What does your PM ritual look like? How can we get better and grow together? Let me know in comments. Thank you again so much, Kate. I have so much. I love you so deep. So deep.
Oh, I love you so much. Thank you for having, this was a brilliant, beautiful conversation, as all of our conversations are. I feel honored to have been invited. And everyone who's listening, tune into everything this woman says. Follow what she's saying. These are great conversations. I look forward to hearing the other ones you've been having as well with other folks.
Thank you. Yeah, this feels like our group chats, basically. Like we just downloaded.
Totally. This was easy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Let me start.